Hey guys, welcome to Demers Views and Opinions, and today I'm talking about NVIDIA's newest line of RTX graphics cards. The RTX Quadros, the 2070s, 2080s, 2080 Ti's. So, what I heard, and this is just one of the deals, is that the RTX 2080 Ti, or was the 20? Is that the 2070, 2080? One of the 20 series graphics cards, not the Quadros, not the Quadros, the 20 series, could do 1080p at 30 frames with real-time ray tracing on. The deal is that real-time ray tracing probably takes up a lot of computing power, and of course these graphics cards are superiorly better compared to last generations doing the same thing. They've come up with a new deal called rays stuff and all this, all like a whole new deal. Just like they did with the Quadro back when no, not the Quadro, the CUDA cores. Back when the CUDA cores came out, they had a different deal and it was superior graphics. But most people, like in the review community, that have reviewed card after card from NVIDIA, won't see nothing more than a 25% increase between the 2080s and the 1080s. They're not going to see that much. But this one guy, he went and during Gamescom this week, he demoed an RTX game with RTX on at 1080p. He could only get about 30 frames. Now we can get side note here, just side note because it's going to help make my point for this. First of all, I don't expect real-time ray tracing at 60 frames at 1080p for another year or two. And I'm just going to say right now, it's probably going to take about a year and a firmware update to do it. It's mostly going to take 1 year, 2 years at the most, 3 if they're not on the ball about getting 60 frames for the RTX cards. That's it. Just if they're not on the ball and getting this for the RTX cards, it's going to take them about 3 years. If they're on top of it, it's going to take them a year. If they're doing it alongside other updates for the cards, all this and all that for the cards, trying to get them leveled out, especially, I don't expect it for the minimum, to work on it minimum at 60 frames for a year. Because the first year is the worst time to buy these cards. Any type of thing technologically related, first year out of the market is horrible. Except for monitors, and they don't really last a year or two. 2 years at the most monitors last, but that's just saying. But a year when it comes to internal components of a computer, keyboard, a mouse. I mean, I've got the 2018 Razer Death Adder Elite on my desk right now, and I love this mouse. I don't think it's been out for a year, and I love it. My Nintendo Switch, I got it 6 to 8 months after release, and I love it. My Xbox One X, no, I don't have the One X, I have the One S. I got that a year after release, and it works perfectly fine. Very little or zero to no glitches whatsoever. So I don't expect NVIDIA to work on these cards, especially for 60 frames, because they're working on getting the bugs out of the cards, the firmwares, the bugs, all of that out of the cards. So we're going to get all that out of the cards. I don't expect 60 frames on 1080p with real-time ray tracing on for a minimum a year. If they do it as like a day one update, that would surprise me. That would seriously surprise me because I don't expect it for a year because they've got many bugs that they didn't find. But when you start mass producing something like this, the bugs start coming out. They just start coming out of the woodwork because it may not have been on the cards that you demoed at Gamescom or wherever you've demoed them at until release date. Then the cards start having mass production problems. All these problems come to fruition and all that. So I don't expect real-time ray tracing with 60 frames at 1080p for another year. I mean, we don't even have 4K at 60 frames on the Xbox One X. I think the PS4 Pro does it, but it's like a fake 60 frames. But the Xbox One X does not have, as far as I know, I haven't heard anything about this, but when it released, it had 4K at 30 frames per second. Most people who had one, especially the review ones, said they did not expect it to have 60 frames per second at 4K for at least a year after release, because they're working on the major updates to fix whatever problems people are having, especially with the console bricking as it did at launch. As far as I know, they are still bricking. It's just standard mass manufacturing problem right there. But we don't have 4K 60 frames on the Xbox One X. As far as I know, the PS4 Pro doesn't either. But if it does, it's probably like a fake 60, or the hardware is just overclocked or running at its max to get the 60 frames. So we don't have true 4K at 60 frames on some of the big consoles. But we do have them on PC, but only because we're overclocking, where we have the PC has the capacity to do 4K at 60 frames. But the RTX cards, as far as I know, they can do 4K at 30 frames with RTX on. It's the frame rate. 4K at 30 frames looks about as good as 1080p at 60 frames. There is little to zero difference between the two. And the RTX cards, if they're doing 1080p at 30 frames, there is still no difference. You can't tell the difference between 30 frames and 60 frames unless 60 frames is what you're used to. You grew up watching 60 frames. Everything was at 60 frames. Nothing hot. No, it was a stay 60 frame. Nothing messed up. I used to game on a laptop. 10 frames was a good day. Now I game on a computer. My graphics card is so horribly and crappy that 60 frames is about as high as I can get to go on Minecraft. I've tried going between 60 frames and 30 frames. Personally, I don't have any videos on this to prove it, but 60 frames and 30 frames, I can't tell the difference. I can't. I tried. I can't. I've tried looking for the difference between the two. I cannot. I have tried. There is just no way that 60 frames and 30 frames are any different. I mean, sure, you're getting double the frame rate, but unless you're looking at it consistently, and you play like a lot of online games, and you have like a 144 hertz monitor and all this, 60 frames and 30 frames, if you have like a regular like 60 hertz refresh rate monitor, 60 frames and 30 frames, there is like a zero difference. A zero difference. I have tried to find any different differences. The gameplay is just as smooth, and I have a card that can barely do Minecraft at 60 frames with max settings. No, it's 30 frames with max settings. No, it's 20 frames with max settings. That's it. And the card I run is an NVIDIA card. It's pretty CUDA cores, but it's still a good card. The deal is though that these RTX cards, even though they're up minimum, I think the 2070 I had seen the price was about 500, starting at 500. You're looking at a new technology that's never been mass tested on the mass market like it is going to be now. The 30 frames are going to be fine if you play a lot of single player games, or if you play a lot of games where frame rates don't really matter that much, but the real-time ray tracing does. Like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Battlefield 5, just to name a few. I mean, there's several games that they're going to be using it. Rage 2 is going to be using it, if I remember correctly. Rage 2 is on the list of games using it. But the point is there's not going to probably hit 60 frames on 1080p for at least a minimum of a year. If it's just something that they didn't unveil at Gamescom, then that's a different story. They probably had one of the original cards that couldn't do 60 frames, but one of the newer ones can. Like the ones they're making now. They probably do 60 frames right out of the box. No firmware updates whatsoever. But the ones they had at Gamescom, they probably didn't have time to get one of the new ones, so they just brought one of the ones that they had. And they could probably only do like 30 frames a second or whatever. No one knows the true power of the card except for NVIDIA. No one knows. So, just to keep me from stop rambling on like this, I'm going to end this one here. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked this video, please like the button down below. If you did, hit the dislike button and tell me why in the comments down below. I'm always open to constructive criticism. Thanks for watching, and bye.